Welcome to the premiere episode of Hello Friend, the podcast. I'm Dave Swenson, and I'll be your host. So, who is this guy and what is this podcast that you've clicked on? So, I'm the oldest of three children, and at the time of this recording, I am roughly 2 weeks away from turning 50. I have four grown children, three girls, one boy, and I have one grandchild. My wife and I have been together for 25 years plus at this point. I married up. She definitely settled. Could have done better. Don't tell her, though. So that's me personally. Professionally, for the last 7.5 years, I've worked for a furniture company locally, and most recently was the chief strategy officer. Prior to that, I was the vice president of operations for another retailer that had a national footprint. I have recently partnered with a associate and founded a nonprofit charity focused on financial literacy, which Tangent will be a sponsor for this podcast. Gotta love the fact that some free advertising for a charity can take place since I don't have any actual sponsors. Why Hello Friend is a title? So, my sister, who is the middle child, had a hard time with names when she was little. So, everyone that she met and talked to was friend. And that's how she greeted them, was hello, friend. So, as an homage to my sister, I've titled the podcast Hello, Friend, because I don't know any of your names, but I hope we can be friends. This episode is brought to you by Financial Foundations of Virginia. Financial literacy is a huge problem in the United States. Did you know that according to a 2022 TIAA Institute Personal Finance Index, that adults, on average, could only correctly answer 50% of the 28 basic money survey questions? Even worse, roughly 23% of the participants failed to correctly answer more than 25% of the questions. Financial Foundations of Virginia believes that through education, attitude, responsibility, and network, everyone has the right to earn their financial well-being. Financial Foundations of Virginia is a 501c3 nonprofit public charity. It's dedicated to improving financial literacy and education for high school and college students, socially and economically disadvantaged populations, and anyone in financial distress. For more information, to sign up, or to contribute, visit them at www.financialfoundationsofvirginia.org. Now back to the show. So I'm sure at this point you're asking, what is this podcast actually about? This guy's told us about who he is, told us about his kids, told us about his wife, told us a story about how he came up with the name for the podcast, he even ran an ad for his charity, but he's yet to tell us what we can expect. Well, what you can expect is expect nothing. You never know what you're going to get. Sometimes this is going to be buffoonery by myself or with friends. Sometimes there'll be guests on an educational or informative topic. Sometimes it'll just be something that is a thought exercise. Basically, it's whatever interests me, and hopefully it'll interest you. So I struggled with what the topic for the first episode should be. Not because I didn't know what to say, I didn't know what topic to choose. I have a bunch of things that I want to talk about. I have guests that I want to bring on, but I really was at a loss for what the first episode should be. How to introduce myself to you guys as an audience that would set a tone and let you know what kind of the feel of the podcast and my purpose for doing it. So I've been mapping things out and writing down ideas and thinking about who I could have on and trying to lay those things out in my head, but I really did not have a concept for what this one should be until the other night. And I was sitting down in my office watching YouTube. Yes, I watch YouTube, get lost in the rabbit hole quite often. But I was watching the most recent episode of Last Meals on the Mythical Kitchen channel. Um, Side note, if you are unfamiliar with the Mythical Kitchen, or any of Mythical Entertainment's products, highly recommend. Everything they put out is quality. But Last Meals is hosted by Josh Shear, who you will probably hear me talk about in a later episode because I truly believe he breaks some stereotypes regarding work ethic of generations. Um, but highly engaging, funny guy. Had Becky Lynch on as a guest. Becky Lynch, for people who don't know, real name Rebecca Quinn, is a WWE superstar, professional wrestler. She's a 6-time women's champion, probably one of the most popular people on the WWE roster currently. And one of the questions that he asked her had to do with legacy. And she pondered legacy and thought about it. And her answer was she had been speaking to Sami Zayn, another professional wrestler, works for WWE on the independent scene. He would have been El Generico for anybody that pays attention to pro wrestling. But he asked her what she knew about her great grandfather. And I believe, and I may get this slightly off, her answer back to him was he was a builder and he boxed. And he told her, see, once you're gone, you'll be summarized up in one sentence. And that kind of hit her in a certain way, and it impacted me to an extent to make it the topic that I wanted to talk about because I believe that it aligns with why I'm doing this. And that topic is legacy. Um, so in my career, I've led management development classes, and one of the discussion points that I had for managers as a kind of a thought exercise, but more the evolution of what your role is as you progress up through ranks within business was about legacy. And a lot of people think legacy is what you leave behind. I am of the opinion that a good leader, a good manager, what you leave, it's not about what you leave behind, it's about who you leave behind. And not so much who the person is an individual, but how you touch that person, either through the way you treated them or what you taught them, how you guided them. There are plenty of people that will be known for creating something, Henry Ford and the Model T, but what outside of that can you really tell us about Henry Ford? Um, yes, he's remembered and his legacy is bringing the automobile to mass production, but my preference would be that people would be what I leave behind in the sense that there would be a large group of people that would go, hey, there used to be this guy, Dave, and he taught me X. And I really like to think that my legacy, I could be summed up with more than just a sentence that, you're imparting knowledge or a skill set or words of wisdom or just caring and compassion that touches people and it makes them remember and they want to talk about you. Um, and I think that is, from a professional standpoint, very important when you're talking about the development of people and getting them to follow you as a leader, understanding that you have their best interests at heart and that you want to see them win and succeed. So my efforts with this is about legacy. I want to use this platform to solidify legacy. I want to be able to share knowledge or information or laughter with a larger audience. I want, again, maybe not to be remembered by name, but for people to talk about an episode that really spoke to them. And I really do feel like your life being summed up in a sentence isn't what this journey is about. You want to be able to leave a lasting impression. And I think the beauty of the internet, and whether that be social media, content creators on YouTube making videos, yeah, TikTok, podcasts such as this give you a chance to reach a wider audience and have a bigger imprint that your life can leave behind. Um, I understand that whole last segment could sound slightly self-righteous. maybe even self-important. It's not designed to be that way. It really is about being in a position of wanting to give back and give back in a way that I think will be fulfilling and bring happiness or a sense of purpose. It's why I co-founded the charity. It was, where was there an area of need that my partner and I felt that we had an opportunity with our skill set to fill in a way that was going to be impactful and beneficial to society in general. Um, it's I've worked the better part of my adult life and been in that business grind, and I think, I know, not just I think, but at one point in time, my wife would have told you I was money motivated. Um, and I argue that point that I was never really money motivated. I was very much title motivated, because it provided a sense of importance, of value. Uh, Byproduct of that was money, but I think ultimately looking back on it, you know, I justified it in my head that it was about providing for my family. Um, I never wanted to be in a position to have to tell my children no. Didn't mean I wouldn't tell my children no, but I didn't want to have to tell them no, that they wanted something and we couldn't do it because we didn't have the money. So I worked and I worked and I worked lots of hours, and I was very driven to succeed, very much had a chip on my shoulder. And looking back, I think I made a misstep. It, I missed out on a lot of things. There are pictures of us on vacation, and my wife and children are standing together, and off to the side is me on my cell phone, conducting business while on a family vacation. Because in my head, it's what my role was. Um, it was not fair to my wife. It was not fair to my kids, and it wasn't fair to me. Looking back on it, I missed out on so much. Um, and I can't go back and I can't change that. I can share that and hope that there are people listening that will understand or learn from what I'm saying. And again, when I talk about legacy, that's really the legacy that I'm looking for, is how can I communicate, whether it be through a personal experience where I've made a mistake and maybe didn't do things the right way, and someone can learn from that so they don't replicate those same mistakes, or at least garner some perspective. Um, can I bring on a guest that's going to talk about a topic that is going to touch somebody in a time of need? Those are the things that I'm looking to do now, and I want to make a difference one way or another. Um, and again, it can be through the charity, it can be through this podcast, it can be in my granddaughter's life. Um, my wife and I had a conversation that I, right, wrong, or indifferent, kind of viewed the grandchild as a do-over, that I was going to get to experience all the things that I didn't experience with my own children because I was focused on the wrong things. Um, and ultimately, I want to correct that. I don't want my legacy to my kids to be that he wasn't there, he wasn't around. I want to be able to fix that. And I think I have, as they got older and I started to realize and refocused on what was truly the important things in life, which was family and memories and experiences, not just the quote unquote being the provider and the best provider I could be. Um, and I apologize. There's going to be a lot of ums and ands and agains and so's. There's a lot of filler words that'll happen as I process this. This one is not as polished and as laid out as I'd like it to be. This is very much just me talking and sharing right now. First attempt, again, I want to set the tone of what you're going to experience, and this is not what all of them will be like. Uh, this it's kind of cathartic. It's maybe some self-help here for me too, to actually share this and vocalize it. Maybe this is partly an open letter of apology to my family for not being there as much as I should have been. as far as a level of engagement. Again, I don't want to say, and I don't think they would say that I was a bad dad or a bad husband or that I wasn't there, or they felt neglected necessarily, but I can look back on it in hindsight and tell you that I was nowhere near as engaged as what I would want to be. Uh, I shared with you I'm about to be 50. I'm clearly a Gen Xer. I think Gen Z has it right with work life balance, at least, and that being important. It's not to say that I agree with all of the viewpoints of Gen Z. I think there is a certain amount of entitlement within that generation, and we'll talk about generational gaps in another episode. But I do believe that their focus on having an accurate or adequate work life balance is right on point. And I'm saying that as a business leader, right? Somebody that for the better part of the last 15 years has sat in executive positions, and I firmly believe that you go to work to have a life. It shouldn't be your life. But I recognize that way too late, and I missed out on so much. I tried to guide companies that I worked for to reinforce that. I was lucky enough to have a CEO in a previous company that truly believed that also, that he treated the business like a family. It didn't matter that we had 1,000 plus employees. It felt like a family. And, for most of those employees, it was 40 hours a week. And that's it. Again, 40 hours a week. We expected the job to be done within the 40 hours because that wasn't your life, your family, you're having everything that occurred outside of work is your life. You work so that you can enjoy life. It shouldn't be a case of just this incessant grind that you never get to actually enjoy the rewards of that grind. And I understand there's going to be people that grind constantly. They want to succeed. Everybody's motivation is different. What drives people is different. Eh, And I'm not telling you how to live your life. I'm sharing my perspective, and hopefully that perspective will resonate with some people. It may just be a different perspective for others to consider and entertain. Just be mindful that people watch and they pay attention and they know when you're there and when you're not, and if you're there but you're not, right? So physically being there but not being engaged isn't really being there, and the impact can be greater than you think it is. And when I say that, it could be greater to you than you think it is. You can't get that time back. You there's a old saying, take the time to stop and smell the roses. Yeah, those roses eventually die if you don't smell them when they're blooming. You don't want to smell them once they're dead. So I know I rambled during this, and it's kind of on topic, off topic with the concept of legacy, but I'm very mindful of how I'm going to be remembered. What right is my granddaughter's child, when asked, going to say a one sentence blurb about what her great grandfather was? I sure hope not. It's a possibility, but I'm going to do everything I can to make sure that it's more than a sentence. Because again, it's not what I leave behind, it's who I leave behind. And hopefully they'll share great memories about what we did, how we did it, the times we had, you know, what I taught them, you know, how they felt or how I made them feel. Uh, Things you create fade away. I could sit here and list a huge amount of policies or procedures that I was the author of at companies I've worked for, or programs that I developed for a company that no longer exists, or things I was involved in a company that still does exist. And the reality is, nobody will ever remember that Dave Swenson created that, right? The guy who designed the program 30 years from now, if the program is even still going, nobody's going to remember or care about that. My hope is that people that sit through my my session during the new hire class that occurs every 2 weeks at the company that I most recently worked for will remember the interaction that we had, the presentation that I gave, and find it to have been beneficial or useful, and that there was knowledge that they're going to share with somebody else. That that to me is legacy. I think this platform provides an opportunity for not just me but people in general to reach a larger audience and make a true impact, no matter how small. If it's just one person that hears one of these episodes and takes something away from it, then me sitting here in front of a microphone in a room and recording this is well worth it. Just from the standpoint of knowing that it reached someone in some way. Guys, I appreciate you stopping by, hanging out for the entire time. I hope you take the time to come back episode after episode. I promise they're not all going to be rambly as much as this one. Uh, they'll be better laid out, a little more organized and focused. But this really was kind of the introduction to this world, and I really do, from the bottom of my heart, appreciate the fact that you took the time to listen. And I really do hope that you come back. This is going to be a journey. We'll take it together. We'll figure out where it goes. Until next time, thanks for listening.